Welcome once again to the J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with ink, pen and ink. So have your kneaded eraser, a number 2 or an HB pencil handy, and any type of ink that you would like to use. But make sure that it's archival, that it's permanent, that it's black, and a smooth ink. And let's start doing some ink drawing. I know that sometimes ink can be a little intimidating. I'm going to try to make it less intimidating by using our number 2 pencil to begin with. Remember, anytime we draw with our number 2 pencil, we're going to erase it. And buildings are fun because they're all geometric shapes. So you can just kind of start out with a geometric shape. Leave enough space for water. Okay, so when you go down, you think to yourself, well, the corner of that little building is maybe going to go right there. I want to leave enough space down here I can see the water. There's the edge of that. That rock wall is going to be fun to draw. Now remember, we don't have to draw every little rock, just enough that our viewer knows what it is. So I want my little palace to go in here somewhere, so I'm just going to block it in. Then I can start doing some little details. I don't want to go that far to the edge. I have to move it over a little bit. Remember, just simple shapes, triangles, rectangles. You don't have to draw this heavy. All you need is just enough to just kind of know where things are. If you wanted to do these trees and things in there, this limb that's hanging out, I think I'm going to avoid that one. I think I'm just going to not do that one in. But these little trees that are over here, you can block them in by just saying, well, here's some trees over here. Like little trees in the background, or just little bumps, or just little, trees can be kind of rounded or geometric even. Remember, don't get attached to this drawing because it's all going to get erased. If you wanted to, with the water that's down in here, you could make yourself some guidelines down there. But just remember that it's all going to be done in ink, and most of this is going to go bye-bye anyway. And if you want to put in like where the little windows go, you're more than welcome to just do those with little rectangular shapes. Just do as much as it takes to get in the shape of the thing, whatever it is that we're doing. Start out simple shapes. Rectangles, squares. And little arched triangles for the roof. Remember that the first drawing that you do is your reference. In other words, you just throw it in, and then you'll adjust it as you go. My roof was a little long, so I had to adjust it. But it's just, it's a guideline. It's like the Pirate's Code. It's a guideline. And we can still adjust it. Nothing is permanent here until we start laying that ink down. A little rectangle right there. Cool thing about buildings too is it's not a big deal if it's slightly off. I like how these little areas hang out over the water. So these are just little guidelines. I probably did more than I normally would do. I don't need guidelines where the brick are or the rock. One really cool aspect about Japanese architecture is they like to embellish edges, get a lot of texture and everything. If you look at the roof lines, look how textural they are. That's really kind of cool. So now what we're going to do is move over to our ink pen. And everything here is going to get erased eventually, but right now it's just a guideline for us. I like to start with the top, the highest peak, and kind of work my way down. Then I could adjust things as I work down. So I'm going to start with the little sculptural things that are on top. Have no idea what they are. They could be little dragons or something. Sometimes if you go to European architecture, they have little gargoyles on top. Those little gargoyles are the spouts, the downspouts for the water as it comes through. I have no idea what these are, but I'm just going to use dots and dashes and look at the darkest areas. Let me zoom into this, and I want to just point out a couple of things that you can see. Like I say, I have no idea what they are. It's still too fuzzy to even figure that out, but look at this little shape. This little kind of triangle shape there. Most of the white part here we're going to leave out. We'll put in the little moldings that are around here and even the little textures that are around the roof line, because that's what makes it Japanese. Nice little curved roofs too. Nothing straight there. But we're just going to kind of put those in. This is from the tree, but these two are part of the architectural. So you don't want to put that one in or that one. Okay, all that stuff is from the tree. So you just ignore those. The rest of it we can put in. You also maybe, to me, I like to look at it and say, okay, what can I leave out? What is something that I can just leave out? This edge right here gets lost. And so does this one a little bit, but not as much as this one. So I'm just going to leave that out, let the branches define that edge. So no hard lines around anything. Let's just start and see where we go from there. I'm going to start with this top little area there and just put a couple little dots and dashes, and then that little shape that's in there with little dots and dashes. You have this little swag over here. Maybe I want to put just a little line in there to show where that is, because you're looking up into the eave, and so you put a little double line in there. And if it's dark, just hatch through it. Hatch, 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 hatch. And that's looking up into the eave. You want to leave yourself a little bit of space there. And then there's these little rectangles on there. You could draw those in, or you could just use little dots and dashes. So I'm just going to put this couple little dots and dashes there. There's one there. There's one here. One there. Like I say, it doesn't matter even if it's totally square. You're just looking at the texture of it. And really, that's about it. If you think to yourself, oh, that's really dark, you can still go in and add more to it. But right now, no reason to add anything to it. There is a shadow that's under there, so I'm going to use little hatched lines to create that little shadow.
little dots maybe. Voila, that's it. Again, we can always come back into it and add more if we need to. Same thing going down the other way. There's a little edge there. I'm going to put that little edge in with my, it's not a line. These are little dots and dashes. And if you want to break it, you're more than welcome to. I mean, if you think to yourself, oh, it's lighter towards the top, leave it out. You can always come back into it later. And there's a lot of stuff that's left out there. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did over here, but this represents the parts that go out. This represents the parts that come in because there's a shadow there. Your whole roof line can be done this way. This one gets, there's a little architectural motif that comes over the top of that one. And you can put that in too if you want to, with little dots and dashes. There's a little ridge pole down there, or a little ridge area that kind of runs into this. And I have no idea what that is. It could be a little person, little figure. Kind of looks like a little person figure, but I don't know. Little dots for the ridge. This one, little dots for the ridge of this one too, if you want. Because there's some architectural things in there that we'll have to get in there. Then here's the other one that kind of comes up. It's just the shape of darkness. It's not real dark, so you don't even have to put those lines totally together. And you probably noticed that I didn't really follow exactly my drawing. My drawing is off a little bit. That's okay. Little dots to show where that roof line goes. Now, if I draw a line all the way across there, I'm stuck with that line. But if I do a little dot and it's not in the right place, I can always change it. I can move it. And one thing that helps to define that edge over there, let me go over there a little bit further, is that tree. So while I'm here, and if you wanted to, you could take your pencil and go, okay, I've got a little tree that comes up in here, and you could draw that in with your pencil if you want to. But whenever you're doing trees, especially trees that are kind of leafy and soft, you do little M's and U's. So M's on the top, U's on the bottom. And you can even have them just hanging out. So this is what I mean. Here's some M's. There's little tiny M's. And here's a branch that's just up here. It's not even attached to anything. You can just have that hanging out there. Don't have to attach it to anything. Okay? Because limbs get kind of thin. But basically what you're doing is just the darkest areas of that tree that you see. And the light areas, you just leave them out. M's and U's. M's on the top, U's on the bottom. And in between, all this stuff in between, you could even do like little circular shapes. And here and there, do a little dot. And voila, you got it. Doesn't that look like a little happy little tree just hanging out up there? And that tree helps to define that edge. And again, if you think, oh, it's darker than that, you can always go back in and add more. But for right now, just kind of keep it simple. And that's kind of be my motto for this. Keep it simple. Look how you have little spots, even little dots that are just hanging out up there. They're not attached to anything. It's okay. There's part of that tree. This part of the architecture has a very dark ring around the inside edge or underneath the awning there. So I'm just going to use little hatched lines. I can always come back into it and make them smoother. But because it curves, I can't use a ruler. I'm just going to imagine that it slightly arches there. And it has those little architectural motifs in there too. So just like I did on these over here, I'm going to do that over here. Just ever so lightly. It gives it a nice pattern. I'm going to get rid of my graphite just to show you. I mean, usually I wait till the very end to get rid of all the graphite. But look how clean and nice that looks. Without the graphite, the little edge is just fine. And again, if you think, oh, there's more darkness in there that I can see, go ahead and add more to it as little dots and dashes. A little more shadow under here. I'm just going to add some parallel line that just put in some shadow under that eave, that awning over there. And this little roof line, it's got some of those little architectural motifs. Put those in there too. They're just little hatched lines, little dots and dashes. Another dark edge under there. You can denote it with dots and then just go back in and zigzag through it so it's a little darker. There's a little shadow under that little eave right there. There's a kind of little square that comes out there, and then a bunch of little squares out here as it comes in. I'm not going to draw those squares in. I'm going to do the stuff in between the squares. So I'm just going to cut little dots. In between the squares. Now hopefully already you're seeing how the edges can take care of themselves. I mean, all the edge of that building and everything is already done. We didn't have to do lines all the way around things. And again, if you think, oh, it's a little darker over there, because that awning, you know, that little motif across the awning is a little darker. You can hatch through it. You can put little dots in there. Whatever you feel like you need to darken it in. The closer the line, the darker the value. So I'm going to just hatch through that. This one I can hatch through this. Even this up here, I can hatch through that. If it's a little darker, if I feel like it's a little darker, I can hatch through that. Add more dots, more dashes, whatever you feel like you need to. I'm kind of noticing that down here, there's these little architectural motifs that are in these, and there probably is one up there, but that tree kind of is covering it up. So I'm just going to pretend that I can see it, because it's going to make that look a little more interesting. And again, another little awning under this one. If you think to yourself, oh, I need some guidelines, go ahead and draw them in. If not, you can direct draw. Just hatch through it. Hatch, 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 hatch. And those little hatches create that dark underside of that awning. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And there's these little blocks under there. You can skip those, or we can come back into it and hatch some more. There's a period of time called the Oriental period in Greek architecture. They used a lot of ornament in there, and I think the Japanese kind of do the same thing. A lot of ornamenting little shapes and areas. A lot of texture. And we're just using little dots and dashes. Here's that other roof line. And much of that is defined by the little trees beyond too. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did up here, down here, but some of the tree is going to run into that. That's okay. So the roof lines are all done the same way we did those others. Dots and dashes. Sometimes I'm not sure if that's my edge, so I'll put a dot on one side and a dot on the other and say, okay, is that about where it goes? If it's not, you can move it. Those little dots will just blend into whatever else is there. Once you get it and you think, okay, that's about the right position, then you can darken it in. Draw a little bit more on this roof line, and then I'm going to show you how to do windows. Windows are easy. Piece of cake. Here's this other roof line. I'm not really sure, so I'm just going to put little dots in there to say, okay, I kind of think that that's where that should go. So your windows, especially if they have panes of glass in them, these don't look like they have glass in them, which is very common for Oriental places, but they're just sevens. So our light source is coming from this direction, which means our shadows are going to be on this side. So I'm just going to put in a little 7. There's one right there, little 7, and one right there. 77. Then you could put in a little dot at the end to just say, okay, this is where the window sill ends there. And if it's dark, which these are kind of dark, you can just hatch through them. Or you can put little dots in there. If there's panes of glass, sometimes you can't see those, and so you just leave them. So on this side, I'm going to do the same thing, but my 7s are going to go the other way. Man. Little dot, and then hatch through it. Hatch, 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 hatch. Ta-da! That's it. The roof line that you can see here has these little tiles on it, and I'm just going to do these little bumps, bump, 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 in a linear pattern. There are those ceramic tiles. There's little bumps. Any place that you feel like it needs a little bit of darkness, just throw in some lines. These are cross-hatched, so I'm just going from the top to the bottom. And I'm leaving a few little spaces because I can see those little supports that are there. Again, if you need to darken them in, you can always go back in later. Little dots and dashes. And your eye makes that connection that those dots are an edge line. And I cannot see what's going on in the roof. I'm just looking at the darkest areas, throwing those in with little dots and dashes. So you have everything you need now to keep going on there. This little tree that's over here, if you wanted to do like little branches and things, you could do that. You could throw a few in there. Don't go too dark with them because they're at a distance. So you could do little limbs and things. There's some of them that are kind of dead looking. And again, just little dots and dashes. And some of those, you don't even have them clinging on to anything. They're just hanging out there at the top. But that the part of the tree is going to define this edge over here. You got part of this roof line that's kind of coming out over here too. When in doubt, leave it out. Or you can always put in a dot and go, okay, does that look okay? If it does, put in more dots. It's kind of a process. This edge that's right here on this little motif, I'm just going to leave it out. I'm going to put a little shadow right there, and then pick it up over here on the edge as it turns the corner there. Hatch through it. Remember to be very gentle when you're drawing. You don't want to press down even with your pen. And I'm just going to leave that out because that looks really nice like that. This window has a little awning. These windows have awnings too. We didn't really throw in the awnings very well. They are little tiny awnings that are there. And again, if you're thinking, I don't know if I should put that in there, put a dot in there. Just try it. This little edge that's right here is in shadow, so I'm going to throw that in. Just hatched lines. There's a little window in there too. I'm going to throw that in with a little 7. And this edge is not even there. I'm just going to leave it out, completely leave it out. And if you think you need a little bit in there, put a dot. Right there, that edge can be left out completely. It's so light. And we can do these trees a little bit later. You can throw them in. You can put little dots in there to just remind you that that's going to be trees. But even just that little bit that I threw in there kind of looks like trees. Kind of excited to get down to the rock. So as we go down, I'm going to kind of quickly put in this little area over here. Same thing with that awning on the other side. You could probably leave a lot of that out. This roof is just little zigzaggy shapes in that right direction. These little thin lines, little hatched lines, if you want to put some of those in to just show that they're a little shadow in there. Okay, when you're ready for the rock is meandering. It's a good word, meandering. It means that it kind of wanders. So you look at these rock here on the corner, and they're huge. So I'm just going to do just a couple little dots and dashes in the direction they go. And then as you get away from those huge rocks, some of these are a little smaller. So there's one there, one there. I'm just going to meander back and forth in little dots. Back and forth. More on the bottom than on the top. Because as rocks go, as they kind of move out away from the light, you're going to have a little shadow on the bottom more than on the top. So just little dots and dashes, and you can make them as big as you want them or as little as you want them, and you don't have to have them all over. Pick out the lightest areas, like right down in this area is really very light. I probably won't do any at all down in there. And if I do, it's just going to be a dot or two. So just little dots and dashes. Try to go in the direction that they flow. So these kind of flow this way and these kind of flow the other way. If you want to make some shadow, you can do some diagonal line. The other thing you can do is if you could pick out some rock, like there's some rock down at the bottom that are very dark, they've got moss on them or something, you can just throw those in with little shapes of darkness. Just say, okay, there's a rock there, there's one over here. Don't be afraid to leave some little areas out. This is just all along that water edge. The water edge is always going to be a little darker. Where the water was that deposits minerals there. Anything that's wet is always a little darker. Moss grows there. These rocks right in this area here are very dark. So I may want to just use little hatched lines and say, this is part of the rock there. It's part of the rock here. Leave the rest of it out. Just pick out the darkest areas. I'm not trying to draw every little rock. I'm just trying to get the darkness that I see in there. You can take this as far as you want it to go, though. I mean, if you want it to be very detailed, you can. But trust me, sometimes less is more. Little dots and dashes, just, and that meandering, just, it's almost like doing elongated U's. You know, there's a little U there, there's a little U here, a little U here. With just dots and dashes. We're just about ready for the water, which is the easiest of all of this. I know you think, oh, that's not going to be very easy. But thanks for trusting me on this. It really is. As you do the water, as you get down to the water, just remember that water is flat. So it's going to lay very horizontal. Don't get stuck in this angle here or even this angle here. It's got to go very horizontally. Look at the edge of your paper and just go back and forth that way. And only draw it in the dark areas. So it's kind of meandering. It's kind of like we did the rock. It's just back and forth in the darkest areas. You have dark area that comes down here. Back and forth. It's got to be very horizontal, very level. As a kid, we used to draw like lakes, like big round beans or something. That's only if you're looking straight down on them. Very straight, back and forth. And if it's light, just leave it out. Like I say, you can always come back in and add more if you need to. So all this really light area in there, you just want to leave that out. But just back and forth. And you can go very long if you wanted to. Just let your pen skip across the page. There's got to be very horizontal. It doesn't have to be straight, your edges, your lines. I know they look straight in the reflection. Let me pull this over a little further. But just has to be close. Very horizontal. Don't turn your pen down too much. Got to be very horizontal. Like I say, you can take this as far as you want it to go. This picture is just a Nagita Castle. Well, hopefully you experience something you've never done before. Because that's what it's all about. Last thing you want to do is sign it. Hopefully you had a fun experience today and learned something maybe, and even tried something that you've never done before. And hopefully somewhere along the way it's made your life a little bit better, because art makes life better.